Commonwealth Bank leads the ASX to a near record. The number of millionaires in Australia is set to soar, and Samsung unveils its fitness ring. Welcome to Fear and Greed Daily Business News. For people who make their own decisions, it is Friday, the 12th of July, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, Commonwealth Bank led the Australian share market higher yesterday with the bourse close to a record on the back of surging equity markets overseas.
The benchmark S&P ASX 200 closed up nearly 1% yesterday to 7,890 points. That's just 7 points below the record close of 7,897 points. That was back in late March. Now, the all-time high for the bourse is 7,910.5 points. That was back on the 2nd of April. Yesterday, it peaked just under 7,900 points. Very, very close. Commonwealth Bank share price pushed through $130 a share for the first time, hitting $130.30 before closing at $129.53. Commonwealth Bank is now worth $217 billion, just shy of BHP's $221 billion. You kind of get the feeling that within weeks, we will have a new largest company on the bourse. Commonwealth Bank is about twice the size of the next biggest bank, that's National Australia. There were a bunch of companies hitting record highs or multi-year highs yesterday from across the economy, including electronics retailer JB Hi-Fi, Bendigo Bank, online property group REA, insurance broker Steadfast, software outfit Technology One, and online accounting software company Xero. That is an eclectic bunch. The three other major banks are also trading close to multi-year highs. The strong session yesterday reflected overseas markets and also hopes that the Reserve Bank won't lift interest rates again this economic cycle. While inflation figures due out in just under 3 weeks will determine what the Reserve Bank does when it next meets, confidence is growing that price pressures are easing overseas as well as locally. And that is helping forecasts for earnings, and that is helping share prices.
Yeah, because this isn't just an Australian story, is it? It is a global story.
Sure is. Globally, investors have priced in what GFSM market strategist Stephen Miller calls a Goldilocks outcome with no recession and easing inflation. But he warns plenty can still go wrong. The move in the local market yesterday came after the S&P 500 closed above 5,600 points for the first time, with Apple's share price jumping 2%. Now, that company is valued at $3.57 trillion US dollars. This month, and it's only the 12th day of the month, Apple's share price is up more than 10%. It means the value of Apple in those days, those 12 days, has jumped 340 billion US dollars, or more than the combined values of all of BHP and Commonwealth Bank. Pretty incredible.
Just so far this month.
That's so far in 12 days, 10 days of trading. Microsoft's share price jumped 1.5% yesterday. Its value sits at just below 3.5 trillion US dollars. Nvidia was up 2.7%. It's at 3.32 trillion US dollars. The six largest companies on the S&P 500 now, so they're Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia, along with Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta. Those top six are worth 16.2 trillion US dollars. That's around 24 trillion Australian dollars. That's way more than twice the value of the entire residential property market in Australia. It's just phenomenal. It isn't just Australia and the US doing well either. The Japanese share market is at a record level. The UK's FTSE isn't far off one, as is the Stocks Europe 600, which measures the biggest 600 companies in the European region. Share markets have gone on a tear. The next question, which I can't answer, will it last?
Sean, obviously a very good day for the market. Any other notable moves locally?
Well, among the large caps, CSL, Wesfarmers, Fortescue, Woodside and Woolies all did well. In fact, 75% of the ASX 200 stocks rose yesterday. It was a good day for the uranium miners, with Deep Yellow, Boss Energy and Paladin Energy all among the best performers. Best, though, was biotech Telix Pharmaceuticals. Its share price finished up 10% after it flagged changes to regulations in the US regarding payments for diagnostic radiotherapy treatments. The gold stocks also did well, with Perseus Mining and Newmont rising sharply.
Now, thanks to Blue Chip Communication, the experts helping financial services companies market, communicate and grow. Visit bluechipcommunication.com.au. What's happening in international markets outside equity, Sean?
Oil climbed for a second day in a row, with figures showing that US stockpiles fell last week, while jet fuel and gasoline consumption rose. When I saw that, it led me to wonder which sectors use most oil. And I kind of knew which sectors, but how much do they use? Now, the US is by far the biggest consumer of oil, and 2/3 of it goes to transportation, about 28% to industrial. Not much actually goes to residential. Of that transportation, 2/3 of it's transportation. Of that, 62% is vehicles. By far the majority are vehicles. About 12% is for jet fuel and aviation. It's why demand for oil jumps so much in the Northern Hemisphere summer, because people in the US jump in their cars and go on holidays. They all need to fill up with gas. Hence, we have this massive spike in demand for oil. In fact, on average, Michael, about 369 million gallons of oil is pumped into vehicles each day in the US. That's about 1.4 billion litres of petrol a day.
That is extraordinary.
It's quite phenomenal. 1.4 billion litres a day.
Where do you even... Now I'm going to make myself sound stupid, but where do they even store that much? That is just...
Yeah.
There's so much for every single day. That is extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Otherwise, gold prices continue to rise with the precious metal heading back towards $2,400 an ounce. And Michael, the Aussie dollar, roaring day yesterday, went from 67.4 to 67.6 US cents.
It is climbing
steadily.
It is. Yeah.
Steadily.
Just inching its way up. Now, Sean, after the show, you have a terrific interview, a bit of a change of pace today with today's interview. You're talking to John Stensholt, a business reporter from The Australian, and it is about a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it's all about, well, it's a business of sport, really, though we go more sport than business, to be perfectly honest. John has been following the business of sport for years and years. You won't mind me saying that. We start with Travis Pisana, who is the Sydney-born baseballer who went to college over on the west coast of the US and could well be the number one pick for the major leagues in baseball, sign-on bonus of $15 million. We then go into payments to the basketballers like LeBron James, whether or not you can make money out of basketball in Australia, how the AFL, NRL cricketers perform, and we did the full circle by finishing up with the Olympics. So great chat about the business of sport and how you can make money out of sport and whether they do make money out of sport. And no one better to talk to about that than John.
Yeah, he knows this space so well. It is a really interesting and fun conversation. Stick around for that one. It's coming up after the show. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says gas has an important role to play in Australia's energy future as the inevitable shift to renewables occurs.
Mr. Albanese said to ensure energy security during the transition period, gas is needed for firming capacity. Firming capacity basically means keeping the grid stable, given the intermittency of wind, solar and hydropower. Why they don't say keeping the grid stable, why do they have to use terms like firming? Don't know, Michael, but that's what it means. Anyway, gas is needed for firming capacity. The Prime Minister also spruiked the need for batteries. He took a swipe at the opposition's pro-nuclear stance, saying it doesn't stack up economically, citing the International Energy Agency, which has said that Australia's comparative advantage is in renewables. He was speaking in Queensland. He covered a bunch of topics. One of them was Joe Biden. And when asked about Joe Biden, he looked slightly uncomfortable. He said his dealing with the US president had always been productive, but he really didn't want to talk about what's going on over there at the moment.
Well, there's nothing to be gained, is there?
Not from him.
By being drawn on that. There is no benefit at all for an Australian politician to be drawn into this conversation.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, it'd be dodging up a storm. Now, Sean, the competition watchdog is suing the Good Guys, alleging the retailer made misleading representations about its store credit and store cash promotions.
The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission claims that the Good Guys ran 116 promotions between July 2019 and August 2023, in which it offered consumers a store credit or store cash if they spent a certain amount of money on qualifying products in its online or physical stores. The watchdog alleges that the Good Guys said that the only requirement to receive the store credit was to make a qualifying purchase. However, that wasn't the case. says the ACCC, because consumers were also required to opt in to receive marketing communications. The ACCC also alleges that the good guys represented that store credit and store cash would not expire or would expire after a reasonable period, when in fact, for the majority of promotions, it expired within 7 to 10 days. The Good Guys is a subsidiary of JB Hi-Fi. Shareholders didn't seem too worried about that. I mentioned earlier on, JB's share price hit a new record yesterday, up a couple of percent. But I think it is good when the watchdog comes in, and it may not seem like much to many of us, but the fact that a retailer isn't doing what it says it's doing, or allegedly isn't doing what it says it's doing, I'm pleased the competition watchdog's taking a look at it.
Yeah, indeed. Now, in the world of economics, the Commonwealth Bank Household Spending Indicator indicates that renters are pulling back on spending more than mortgage holders.
Renter spending was down nearly 1% last month, whereas outlays by mortgage holders was up 1.5%. Of course, those who fully own their homes, they're spending even more. Their spending was up a couple of percent. Household spending has been overall weak, although it picked up 0.6% over the month of June. It's now about 4% higher over the past year. Also yesterday, Assistant Minister for Trade and Manufacturing Tim Ayres came out and said shipping around the world is being buffeted by conflict in the Middle East, including actions by Yemen's Houthi militants. He said the problems are pushing up prices for Australian consumers and businesses because they're having an impact on the duration and cost of shipping travel to Australia.
This is an interesting one, Sean. A bit of talk about this one. ANZ is under fire for how it operates in the government bond market after allegations it overstated the value of government bonds it traded by more than $50 billion in 12 months, boosting its prospects of winning lucrative mandates issuing Commonwealth debts.
It's a little bit inside baseball, and if you're a bond trader, it's really interesting. Now, for the rest of us, though, where I think this really matters, I mean, certainly it harms its prospects of working with the government when the government's issuing bonds in the future. But it's a really bad look for a major bank to have done this. It basically admitted to the Australian Office of Financial Management, which manages government debt, that figures it had supplied detailing the volume of turnover was wrong. Now, this is according to a report in the Financial Review. It's one of 19 market makers for Australian bonds. You have to be very well regarded to be one of those 19 market makers. Now, ANZ, like the other 18 market makers, is required to submit quarterly figures to the agency. The AOFM selects the largest traders for issuances. ANZ initially said it had facilitated $138 billion in government bond trades for clients in the year ended June 2023. The actual number was $83 billion, a difference of nearly 65%. ANZ's trading of government bonds is already under scrutiny from both the AOFM and ASIC. It's being investigated by the regulator for allegedly manipulating the benchmark 10-year futures rate when it was appointed a manager for a $14 billion government bond sale last year. This just adds to that and the spotlight on bond trading within ANZ. Now, financially, it may not make a huge difference. Reputationally, though, it could.
Sean, I mentioned this at the top of the show. The number of millionaires in Australia will jump by at least 20% in the next 4 years, thanks to higher home values, superannuation balances, and gifts and inheritance.
That's according to the UBS Global Wealth Report released yesterday. It says Australians' wealth grew by nearly 10% last year, twice the average rate of the other 56 countries studied in the report. It says the median wealth per adult, which is probably a better measure, median wealth per adult in Australia is almost $400,000, sitting behind only Luxembourg in the rankings and ahead of Belgium, Hong Kong and New Zealand. Currently, Australia is home to 1.9 million US dollar millionaires. So that's actually about 1.5 million Aussie dollars. So 1.9 million US dollar millionaires with total wealth of about $8 trillion. That number is set to hit 2.3 from 1.9 to 2.3 by 2028, the report says. We know the housing and super story. The intergenerational wealth transfer is particularly interesting. UBS says the oldest of the baby boomers are dying. The youngest are retiring. That population bulge will lead to a greater transfer of wealth to children, either through inheritance or the bank of mum and dad. So that money is shifting down the line to children and creating more millionaires.
Yeah, fascinating story. International news now, Sean. Joe Biden, he's in a bit of trouble with senior Democrats, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, saying they are open to replacing him ahead of the November presidential election.
Yes, as many Democrats have pushed to have Joe Biden replaced, Chuck Schumer, one of the most senior members of the party, has stood by the president. But Axios is reporting that Schumer is telling donors he's open to replacing Mr. Biden. It came after party heavyweight Nancy Pelosi said the president had a decision to make about his future. There was also actor George Clooney. He came out and said Mr. Biden needs to be replaced as the party's presidential candidate. Clooney is a big fundraiser for Joe Biden. Michael, I think it's fair to say the drums are beating louder and louder for Joe Biden.
Yes, and you might say that time is running out a little bit as well, because every week that this conversation then kind of continues is another week lost for campaigning.
Yeah, and what's interesting is Donald Trump, who had been very quiet the last 48 hours or so, he's stepped up once again, and he's starting to pick on Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris is definitely the obvious replacement for Joe Biden. So Donald Trump's attacks are all about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris now.
Yeah, he's looking ahead, isn't he? All right. Now, Sean, Elon Musk, his brain-computer startup Neuralink aims to implant its device into a second human patient in a week or so, and hopes to have devices in patients numbering in the high single digits by the end of the year.
In a wide-ranging discussion broadcast on X, Mr. Musk and several key Neuralink staffers described the current device's capabilities and future possibilities, such as repairing paralysis and memory loss. Mr. Musk said Neuralink can help by creating a closer symbiosis between human intelligence and digital intelligence. The idea, Mr. Musk said, is, and I quote, to give people superpowers, end quote. That's according to Bloomberg. In the shorter term, the company won't be giving superpowers. The company aims to help patients with brain injuries and spinal injuries by enabling them to control phones and computers with their minds. It does that by implanting into the skull a device that it calls telepathy, a round disc with electrode threads attached to it that's inserted into the brain tissue. Now, they have done it once before, and the point where the electrodes were inserted into the brain tissue wasn't particularly successful, so they think they've overcome that, and in the next week or so they'll be implanting the device into a second human patient.
Samsung is taking on Apple in wearables by launching a smart ring and releasing a new high-end watch with a similar look and features as the Apple Watch Ultra.
Would you wear a smart ring?
I've got very small fingers, so I need quite a
small, 9 sizes apparently.
Well, not small, like slender fingers.
Slender? No, I'm the same. Yes. Yeah,
I've got like pianist hands. Sean, that is a word that you need to make sure that you enunciate very clearly. Pianist hands.
I thought you said that. Anyway, at Samsung's Unpacked event in Paris, the company said its long-anticipated Galaxy Ring will cost $400 and monitor a wearer's fitness and sleep. The ring will have sensors for skin temperature, track women's menstrual cycles, and last up to a week on a single charge, according to a report in Bloomberg. Samsung's other major new debut was the Galaxy Watch Ultra, a $650 wearable made of titanium with sleep apnea detection and 2-day battery life. The Galaxy Ring will be available in 9 sizes, Michael. Hopefully that will fit the pianist fingers of yours. And Samsung will also offer fitting kits to help users find the right size. The company also said the device won't require a subscription, distinguishing it from other new wearables. I love the idea of a wearable smart ring.
I'm just glad we're at the end of the show, because I don't think there's any coming back from that, is there?
No.
Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. You're speaking with John Stensholt from The Australian.
The business of sport. Start with the Aussie baseballer Travis Bazzana, likely to earn $15 million next week when he signs potentially, or was picked potentially 1, 2, 3 or 4 in the NBL draft, and we go on to the how other sports make money.
Wouldn't you have a sleepless weekend if you were him, knowing that something that you have worked so hard for is coming and it could go spectacularly well?
That I know Travis from many years ago. He grew up with some of the kids, went to the same school as some of the kids. And he, at about the age of 14 or 15, decided that he was going to be the best baseballer. And it literally, he decided that and has been driven ever since. And I wish him the absolute best of luck. He comes from a very, great family, great community, all that sort of thing. And I really hope he does well, but he's a very, very determined chap, Travis.
Yeah, deserves every bit of success coming his way. That is a great interview coming up with John Stensholt. Give that one a listen. It is fantastic all round. Up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is also where you can sign up for the free weekly newsletter. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 12th of July, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us as well online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.